Hello, everyone. Hi, good to see you. Hi, Nauman. Always nice.
Hello,
Suresh.
Suresh.
Hi, Sasha, Alina. Hi, Susanna. How are you? Hello, everyone. I see a lot of
Awesome.
new faces, I think. So it would be great if you can put in the chat where are you based now so we can see how big our community is growing. That would be great. I have a new face to introduce to you all, I think. I want to introduce my new colleague, my very, very dear colleague, Dominique. She just joined the Consensus Group team. She's working with me and Barbara in the marketing team, and she will be also engaged with you all in community topics, in marketing, in everything that we do in order for grow our community further. So, Dominique, do you want to say a few words?
Sure, certainly. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to meet Claudia also. And I'm really looking forward to this webinar, but also to get to know you not only here, but also on our different platforms. So please feel free to pop me a message. I will put my email also there at the end of the webinar. So you can reach me or Mariana or Barbara with anything related to upcoming events or training or anything related to mediation and conflict resolution. So thank you for the opportunity. And yes, I think I'll just end it there for now.
Thank you, Dominique. So I'm very happy to host the webinar of today with Claudia. You already know her. She's our alumna from our IMC campus, International Campus, but also our Germany-based campus. So Claudia uh, is a very, very dear alumna and friend of ours. So I'm so happy to have the opportunity to have her today talking us about mediation and coaching, which I'm sure that a lot of you are going to be interested in. So Claudia, if nothing, I don't, oh no, sorry, I do have something else to say, I forgot. We're recording this webinar. So if anyone doesn't want to appear on the video recording, please just turn your camera off, and so you will not be seen in the video. So if you want to participate, you can just open your microphone but leaving the camera off, or write your questions in the chat. So now, without further ado, Claudia, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Mariana. Welcome, everybody. So thrilled to see a big crowd here. I am going to start sharing my screen. Sorry about that. Okay, I practiced this before, I promise. Okay, can you see me? Can you see me? Yes?
Yes, we can see you and see your screen.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the mediator as coach. The very first thing I want to say is a lot of these things that I'm talking about, you guys already do. Maybe to more or less an extent, but it is nothing really fundamentally new. But I wanted to maybe look at it with more awareness and a little bit more emphasis. So do not take this as something like, oh my God, she thinks that I'm never doing this. No, no, no. I know you guys are already doing a lot of these things. Just indulge me in just looking a little bit more in detail at a couple of these elements of a coaching posture. So, okay, my clicker doesn't work, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned mouse way. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, because we need to be well equipped. I'm stealing and reformatting a little bit the old Forrest Gump quote here, that mediation is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Okay, I'm sure you can write in the chat some kind of chocolate surprises that you have seen in your days as a mediator, right? I mean, sometimes you sit there with a pit in your stomach when all hell breaks loose and drama happens and things like that. Your posture becomes so incredibly important. And the more you have thought about posture beforehand, and the more you have looked at how do I keep my own perspectives, my own judgments, and so on in check, the better equipped you're going to be to just keep calm and keep the mediation on track. Because we all know that, yes, our energy matters. Okay, so just very, very briefly, I came to mediation from coaching. Okay, so I was a coach first. And like they say, you can take a girl out of coaching, but you cannot take the coaching out of the girl. That is not happening. And I realized, gee whiz, this coaching posture thingy can come in handy really, really well when I'm doing mediation. Because I came to it from team coaching. I wanted to have things to do collective sense making, collective decision making, and just ways of doing workplace conflict resolution. But in the end, you know, I use mediation a lot in my coaching as I use my coaching a lot in my mediation. So today, again, an invitation to maybe look a little bit more closely at 3 very basic fundamental coaching 101 items, and that is expectation management, leveraging emotions, and critical non-judgment. You do not need to take notes because I have a way for you at the end to get a copy of the slides and a write-up of the key takeaways out of this presentation for your convenience. So just relax, sit back, and just take it all in. Okie doke. So what's in it for you? I think the more we are clear about our posture, about how we show up, the more we can deal with pressures, meaning, and when we feel less stressed and less personally responsible for fixing conflicts, then, you know, there's going to be a different energy in the room. Also, really, if people walk out of the room with not just a solution to a problem of posture or things like that, but they actually walk out with a better understanding of themselves, different perspective about the other conflict party, and so on, the actual impact of the mediation can surpass that of just fighting over positions. Emotions are going to come up. We're going to talk about that. We want to empower folks. We want them to take responsibility for their solutions and what happens after. And I think it's just a really good way to mediate better, right? It's just more stuff in your tool rucksack that you carry around with yourself. And I'm sure that a lot of these things you guys already do to some degree. So let's get started with number 1, expectation management. It's maybe a little bit of a hyphenagling word, but the idea is the expectation that we as mediators have when we walk into the room. And I am proposing here that we go from a resolution focus to an awareness focus, okay? Because mediators very often step into conflicts expecting the resolution and the agreement But when the parties really do like clarity about themselves and can't really understand the others, often agreements, even if they happen, can be superficial and temporary. And oftentimes then even there lacks accountability in the doing afterwards. Therefore, in my opinion, it's kind of our first priority that the conflict parties need to become aware. We have to help them do that. And then we need to kind of help them to communicate that between each other. So instead of walking into the room and saying, oh, I am here to facilitate, to mediate these people to get to a solution, I literally walk in and say, okay, I'm curious, let's figure out, and let's help the conflict parties figure out what's really important to them, what's really bringing them to this. And then let's hold their hand as they communicate that, so they get, all of them get understanding of the other and shift perspective. And here's the important thing: the agreement is going to be the happy consequence. So you see that when I walk into this room, I just think self-awareness and communication, having the faith that, of course, still applying proper mediation process, of course, that's always the given here, that we will get to an agreement, and that will happen. So self-awareness first, and we all can relate to that, to like, yes, the parties need to know their needs, their interests, their values, assumptions, motivators, triggers, and so on. I'm sorry if I interrupt. Dominic, were you just trying to let me know something? I saw you. You're on mute. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, I did, but there was a pop-up on the screen, but I cleared it. I hope I didn't disturb the image that you were showing, but it's now clear.
Okay, so okay. But everybody can hear me okay? Yes? Okay, yes. Fantastic. Thank you. So self-awareness first, because I really have come to see that conflict parties coming in with a position are not always clear why that is their position. They might be really upset about something without themselves really understanding what their needs and their interests are. We always talk in like step 3 in the mediation process, look at the needs and the interests, and this is exactly that. But it's like, don't assume that they know, because they might not. They might not know their own needs and interests, and we have to kind of help them through that, through questioning and giving space and giving time. Okay, so these insights are really important. Okay, allow me here very, very briefly to show a teeny tiny video. So for that, I will need to switch my share. And if you could maybe hold your questions until later, that might help. But if there's a burning question, we could already take care of that now. But the video share. Oops, open. Okay, there we go. Meet Charlie and Sarah. They came into mediation stuck, and visibly so. Charlie sat stiffly, arms crossed, his jaw clenched, every time Sarah spoke. Sarah, on the other hand, kept her eyes down, and her voice clipped, polite, but ice cold. You could feel the tension in the room, like the air had thickened. The issue? Reporting. Charlie demanded detailed weekly reports. Sarah insisted monthly summaries were enough. The energy was all push and pull, defensive, positional, draining. And honestly, many well-intentioned people, even some mediators, would have been tempted at this point to jump straight to splitting down the middle. How about bi-weekly reports? Split the difference, patch the conflict, and then move on. But here's the thing, that wouldn't have been but a surface level fix. It might have calmed things temporarily, but it definitely wouldn't have healed what was underneath. Because in awareness and transformation style mediation, we don't just mediate the problem, we mediate the people. So I paused and I asked something different. Charlie, what makes this solution so important to you? What's really at stake here? And I gave it space, lots of space. No rush, no agenda. I let the silence breathe and percolate and marinate. Charlie stared at the table, more silence, then a breath. His shoulders dropped just slightly. Last year, he said, communication collapsed. It was chaos. People dropped the ball, and I felt responsible. I don't want to go through that again. I need to know we're aligned, that people are accountable. That moment broke something open. Sarah looked up for the first time, surprised. Charlie, I didn't know that's what this was about. For me, it's the opposite. I'm scared that too much reporting will crush the team's flexibility, that it'll kill our flow. We're barely keeping up as it is. The room shifted. The tension didn't vanish, but it softened. They weren't enemies anymore. There were two people trying to protect something they deeply cared about. Trust, creativity, integrity. That clarity allowed them later to co-create a solution they both could believe in. But more than that, it changed how they saw and worked with each other, from obstacles to partners. Thank you. Okay, again, a lot of things here you guys already do. I am going to find my screen again. Ta-da. And we should be back if everything is all right. Can somebody give me a thumbs up? Thank you.
We can see everything. It's perfect.
Okay. So we all have gone through the list of questions and in trying to elicit needs and interests and so on. And it's, you know, there are always variants of what makes this particular point so critical to you. Meaning it's really the focus on the conflict party. What does success in this mean for you? And then really giving it the space to listen. And sometimes we have to be a little bit more actively coachy, you know, in order to really hold the space and give the person the chance to really go there. Okay, because it might not be something that they're really familiar with. And that, of course, is very different from positional questions like, what's your demand? And, you know, what do you want? But really, like, why is it important to you? Okay, the second step, of course, after each conflict party has come to some self-awareness, and maybe already through this phase of exploration, the other conflict party has already heard some things, already seen some little glimpses of insight. But now comes essentially the part where you would allow them to share. So there will be communication between the conflict parties, which will then, build these bridges of understanding, right? So in the previous case study, once I thought I had turned that off. Sorry about that. Once Charlie had shared, already just shared with the mediator, the other conflict party had heard that and was really getting an aha moment on it, which then in turn made her to open up and so on. So then you can shift perspective. You can look at the conflict through the eyes of other. And our job then as mediators who come with a coaching posture is really to hold that space and ultimately trust the process and trust the parties that they will be able to get there. And there's a word that I learned from German, which is called Lösungslosigkeit, which I translate into English as solutionlessness. We as mediators / coaches need to be okay with a temporary state of being without a solution, and without our conflict parties temporarily being without a solution, and kind of hold the reins on this desire to get to a solution quick, right? Because it's so uncomfortable not to have it. And don't jump to those solutions. Don't try to control the outcomes, but truly let things unfold with enough space and time. So in terms of expectations, if we summarize this now, is walk into a mediation, maybe with a focus on awareness and communication, and trust that, of course, after you apply a proper mediation process, that the agreement is going to happen as a consequence. Okay. So that would conclude my first point. The second one, and we're keeping the same general idea, but looking at it from slightly different perspectives. The next one here is about emotions. Emotion is often seen as something to control or to de-escalate. But when you adopt a more coaching posture, those same emotions become a gateway towards deeper needs, different dialogue, and lasting resolutions. Therefore, I would invite you to leverage emotions constructively rather than suppressing them. So let's talk about that a little bit. Emotions are not disruptions. Emotions are data. Okay, they're not. They're such an incredible data point, because I've seen this also in role plays that we do in our weekly role play group. It's like the conflict parties go into this dramatic, high emotional charge state, and sometimes the mediators are just like, "Oh my God," right? But as a coach, you go and you say, "Oh, now we're getting somewhere good," right? I mean, it's a completely different posture. You welcome that, because without that, you're not necessarily deep enough, or it's not a causality, but you know that when it comes up, you are deep. Let's say it like that. That's a bit more correct. So very quickly, another one was David and Laura. I hope I will get faster at doing this. Video, share, open, and there we go. Enjoy. I want to take you into a family mediation, a co-parenting case after a divorce. The presenting issue was pretty ordinary. Who gets to host their daughter's birthday party this year? Laura, the mother, insisted it should be her turn. David, the father, was adamant that he should be host. Both came in with fixed positions. Voices were tight, defensive. Anyone watching from the outside would think, they're just arguing over logistics. She lives with me most of the time. It only makes sense. No. Last year you decided everything without even asking me. This time I get a say. In many mediation settings, the instinct would be to calm them down, contain the heat, maybe suggest alternating birthdays or sharing the day somehow. Try to get past the emotion and into solution mode. That's often what we're trained to do as mediators. But what if the emotion isn't the problem? What if it's the signal we've been waiting for? David, I can see this really matters to you. Can I ask, what's behind your reaction just now? I missed her birthday last year. I wasn't even told about it until the day before. I showed up with a gift and found out there had already been a party. She didn't even seem to notice I was late, and that scared me. The room went still. Laura looked at him differently. I asked, "What's this bringing up for you?" "I didn't realize it hit you like that. I thought you didn't care enough to be involved. I was angry and just went ahead with it. But hearing you say that, I get it now." The conversation moved into a completely different space. They weren't arguing about the party anymore. They were expressing grief, a fear of losing connection with their daughter, of being sidelined as parents. And from that space of real vulnerability, they, not just for the birthday, but for all celebrations going forward, they reflected both their love for their child and their longing to stay connected as parents. The reason I'm telling you this is that when we try to suppress or bypass emotion, we risk missing the heart of the matter. But when we stay with it, recognize it, normalize it, invite it in, we create space for something real. Emotions aren't the noise around the conflict. They're the music underneath it. And when we listen well enough, we start to hear what truly matters. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, there seem to have been some audio issues, but I hope that you heard well enough. I am going to try to find my share again. Okay, so that was David and Laura. And you see that these examples that I'm showing are kind of variations on the same theme, and just trying to look at essentially the same thing, but maybe with a slightly different focus. So as mediators, it is a matter now of decoding those emotional signals. And here it's to have clarity that emotions can be loud, but emotions can also be very subtle and quiet. Okay, like on one hand, you have people that yell and hit fists on the table or start like crying, and others might calm down and sigh and bunch up their shoulders and clasp their hands. Okay, it's all emotion. And so the more also adept we become at reading those signals, the more data points we're going to have. You can think about it a little bit like a dashboard of lights in an airplane cockpit. These dash lights, these cockpit instrument panels and so on, they indicate that something very important is beneath the surface. And just turning them off doesn't really solve the underlying issue. It just hides the essential signals, and we do not want to fly blind. So use your detective skills when it comes to emotions. And as we now go and identify these and bring them to the surface and say things like, oh, this appears like it makes you really upset. We welcome them in, we talk about it. It's not something we put under the rug. Then I think it's very important to reframe this emotion, no matter how strong or without judgment, as something normal and positive. Tell the conflict parties, this emotion is good, okay? We're getting close, so let's take advantage of this. And not to add a sense of guilt or judgment on top of the already strong emotional charge. So as mediators then, what are some of the practical tips? The most important one, I really think, is your own state. When all hell breaks loose and you stay positive and curious and open and non-judgmental, that escalates a lot. That really is hugely important. Again, validating and welcoming the emotions, giving time, because thinking and exploration takes time. It's not something that necessarily you can do in like 5 seconds. So ask a question and give people really time to explore, especially if it is something new, or to calm down, or to consider something new. Silence is really a huge help there to create this reflective space. And then really asking and working through this, what's behind the emotion? What's behind the emotion? So in summary here, it's truly detect, like become a detective of emotional clues, normalize them as something positive and constructive, even though they feel really maybe aggressive or defeatist, or you think you're never going to get anywhere. No, but normalize it and then address them. Try to decode the message behind the emotion. Good. Whew, that was point 2. Let's look at point 3, and that is about radical non-judgment. I added the word radical here because it's really taking it to the extreme. So let's explore a little bit about what I mean by that. Okay. And you see that here I go from neutrality to non-attachment. Again, it's maybe verbiage that might not be so clear at a first glance, but let's dissect it a little bit. The core idea here is that non-judgment, which is a state internal to the mediator, okay, it is inside the mediator, the state of non-judgment, allows them to fully step into each party's world, and therefore empowering this dialogue and really giving understanding, which then allows the conflict parties to create their own solutions. It's truly a state of curiosity, unimpeded by our own internal baggage. So
let me do that first. Let me first go through like this thing here. So neutrality is something that is one of the core tenets, of course, of mediation, and we're always, and we're very well trained in that as well, is not to take sides, to keep an impartial stance, to not let your own biases and preferences go into outcomes and things like that. Most often it is, however, understood, especially by novice mediators, as balancing of interactions. If he gets 5 minutes, she gets 5 minutes, and so on. And of course, avoiding favoritism, and so on. And that's all good. It is a prerequisite. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's not good. It has to be there. Okay. But radical non-judgment, if you read the sentence, the blue sentence at the bottom, it is the active internal commitment of the mediator that underpins and deepens this external principle of neutrality. Meaning, the more we know ourselves, the more neutral, the more truly non-directive, the more curious and non-judgmental we can be. So it's work, reflection work, things we think about before we ever step into a mediation. It's not something we wing. We learn about our judgments, about our opinions, about our assumptions and expectations, about our triggers, about our biases. Okay. And once we have those, we can then step out of them and let them go and stay truly free, essentially. So it has a lot of very obvious benefits here, but rather than being a referee, we move into this anthropologist stance where we are just so absolutely curious and transfixed and without judgment about a new tribe or something like that we study. And one of the benefits there is the empowerment. The less we bring ourselves and our preferences and our solution ideas and our judgments in the subtlest of ways into the way we ask questions or we guide the process, the more empowered, therefore, the conflict parties are in finding their own. Okay, it's the context stays clear and clean. And so, ask yourself self-check questions like, am I subtly guiding them to a solution that's my own preference? Am I limiting their options by how I frame my question? And rather stay with very open exploratory questions that do not carry a potential direction or preference of yours in it. Like, what possibilities can you imagine in a certain more general sense? So I am going to give you also just a tiny bit of a break. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes to watch another little video, and then we get to the end of this thing. Oops, sorry. It's not as easy as it looks. Oh, video. I wanted a video. Sorry. There we go. Let me tell you about a neighborhood mediation between two people who had lived next door to each other for years, Rita and Jordan. They barely spoke anymore. The issue? Noise and retaliation. Rita complained that Jordan's teenage son was playing drums in the garage at all hours. Jordan, in turn, accused Rita of deliberately turning on her garden sprinkler to spray his driveway whenever his car was parked outside. Both swore it was the other who started it. You think it's fine for your kids to bang on the drums like we're at a rock concert? I haven't had a peaceful weekend in months. You are targeting my property. You sprayed my mother while she got out of the car last week. That's harassment. Now, a neutral mediator might just say, let's make sure each party gets equal time. Let's talk about time limits for drumming and redirect sprinkler heads. And honestly, that wouldn't be wrong. It might even get a quick agreement. But that approach would miss everything underneath. I decided to take a different path, not just neutral, but radically non-judgmental. Jordan, I can tell this has been upsetting. Can I ask, what does this situation represent for you? It's not just a sprinkler, it's... I already feel judged in this neighborhood. Single dad, loud kid. I am trying my best. That sprinkler, it feels like I'm being reminded every day that we don't belong here. Rita, what about for you? Beyond the noise, what's this been like? My husband passed last year. It's been so quiet. I started gardening to cope. That drum beat, it's like it cracks the calm that I'm trying to hold on to. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, I just wanted space to breathe. Those moments of shared vulnerability changed everything. When judgment was suspended, when both were deeply hurt without labels like overreacting or aggressive, something shifted. They saw each other not as combatants, but as humans, both hurting in different ways. Needless to say, from that point on, coming to an amicable, mutually agreeable solution was a foregone conclusion. The reason I'm telling you this is that radical non-judgment doesn't mean we don't guide a process. It means we're willing to see the full person in front of us, not just their behavior or their initial position. That's what opens space, not just for resolution, but for real repair. Thank you.
Okay, so while I'm trying to put this up again here, I want to, however, say that obviously in real life, it's not like you ask one question and out pops, you know, this very self-reflected answer. Obviously, it doesn't happen like that. It might happen, but usually that is the work to get them from you know, talking about a wet car to talking about grief, to talking from a noisy teenager, or to talk noisy teenager to grief, or from a wet car to a sense of belonging in a neighborhood. That is what I wanted to illustrate here. Of course, it's not, you know, like one question and there's the answer. Just wanted to make sure that that's understood. Okay. One really important thing is here that we all judge. Do not think that there's some magic way that all of a sudden you can get into a state where judgment doesn't happen. No. Everybody judges. I think it's the way that we as human beings are wired. Okay. The trick here is to
have awareness of and recognize the judgment, and then to let it go. That's why I used kind of this balloon picture here. It's like, let them fly away, acknowledge them and let them go. There's no place for your opinions, your judgments, your versions of solutions in a mediation. Okay, let them float away like balloons. And here again, it comes back to the basic premise. The more you know yourself, the more you're easily able to detect your own triggers, your own things. You see when it happens. Okay, and you know, you probably have your own examples of triggers you have previously detected in yourself. So if you detect, if there's judgment plopping up in your thinking, in your brain, like a bubble in a champagne glass, you know, it just comes, all of a sudden it's there, okay? To then go and say, oh, I notice that I am judging here. And then to say, okay, I let it go, and I will refocus on understanding what is going on with my conflict parties right now. If I get triggered, and we might be triggered by cultural differences, by gender, by personality types, by mannerisms in the conflict parties that remind us of an ex, right? Whatever the trigger is, we notice it. Ah, okay, something is triggering me, but let it go, and I need to be curious about them and not reactive to my own trigger. Another really big one is the desire to help, yeah, and to be directive, to offer a solution that makes so much sense in our own brain, and to offer it up. Look here, it is on a silver platter. That also is something to let go and help them come up with their own solutions. You can sometimes put something in the room, but you shall never be attached to whether they accept it or not, do it or not, agree or not. Okay. So last thing, I promise, how are we on time? Okay, last thing, very brief, but I think quite important here is this thing here. If I do it one more time, it's going to be faster yet. Okay.
The mediator has a really big job when he is mediating. There's so much to keep in mind and to keep focusing on. Just to get a little bit of an overview, I want to diagram really shortly. So let's see how this goes. So in a typical mediation, there's conflict party 1, conflict party 2. Of course, these can be groups. It can also be more conflict parties, but to keep things simple and maybe get the gist of what I'm talking about, let's just say that there's only these 2. Of course, down here, there's the mediator. And so what does the mediator need to keep in mind? First of all, of course, he has to watch the conflict party. He has to watch the other conflict party, be aware of what they say, how they say it, and so on and so on. Of course, that also includes, and this is supposed to be an iceberg, their position up here. That's kind of what's visible. And then also keep in mind all the underlying kind of needs, interests, preferences, all the other stuff that is going on there. So you see that already in that, that's kind of Mediator 101, we have to know the conflict parties and we have to observe and keep track of what's going on. So of course then there's also this kind of thing. How do they interact? What one person says, does that set off the other? is what's their stance toward each other, the relationship. When we talk about relationship, of course, there's also relationship from the mediant to, or from the conflict party to the mediator. So this is very much a bidirectional kind of situation. And now come a couple more. Because the first one is the mediator needs to very much keep track of his own state. We have to know, are we being triggered by something going on here? Are we starting to judge? Is, certain things become uncomfortable? Maybe I'm not as neutral as I should be, and so on. So there's always this fundamental self-awareness of the mediator that has to go on at all time while all this stuff is going on. And then, of course, the mediator needs to know what he puts out there, meaning, is he starting based on his own biases and projections and things like that? Maybe be judgmental a little bit, be directive in ways that are not really appropriate. And so he has to monitor the way that he interfaces. And then, of course, as well, see, because he might not realize it in the moment as he creates the output, that something that he did or she did was maybe not quite right, but he or she might see it from the reactions coming back. So you see here that there's so much going on. And this is also not necessarily something that you know and are able to do from day one, and that is okay. And that's why I kept some of the items here today quite simple, so that you have something simple to go and integrate in order to become more multifaceted in your awareness, that it's not just the problems that you keep or the conflict you keep in mind, but that you keep the conflict parties and their relationships in mind, that you keep in mind how you relate and they relate back to you. And of course, the all-important self-awareness at all times. I hope that this was helpful. Thank you.
All right. We're nearly done, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around. I am going to last one here. Perfection. Okay. So there's really a lot going on, and but here, just to put the final touch on this last point here, was the more you know yourself, the more of this reflective introspection work that you do, the more you can take yourself out of the equation and allow the conflict parties to find their own awareness and solutions. And that is the hallmark of any coaching approach. So as we bring it all together, there were three slightly different ways, but always to look at this one overarching goal. What can I do to raise awareness and transform and kind of build on this transformation? So first of all, awareness and communication of the conflict parties. How do I manage emotions and how do I leverage them? And then how do I build in myself the state of radical non-judgment? Did I miss one? Yeah, so it's just a nice anecdote, because mediation can be a little bit like gardening. You cannot force flowers to bloom, but you do nurture in an environment that's conducive to them. And that's kind of this non-judgment part. Awareness is the fertile soil. Emotions are the growing pains, and agreements naturally follow if the sun's shining. So let's make sure that happens. So what would be next for you? Well, I would invite you to, maybe think about at least one of these 3 points, and maybe deepen your understanding a little bit of it. Try it in
your next mediation or your next role play. Learn more about coaching and coaching posture in general, and then why not get a coach? I love to coach mediators because it leverages their capacity in order to do a good job with the rest of all their mediations that they do. So I had promised you a way that you can get the slides and a small write-up. You can go to topcoachluxembourg.com /IMC25, or you can look at the QR code and then you can get the slides and the handout there. And now I would then open it up for Q&A. I'm also going to put the thing in the chat, or Dominique can do it. I think I went quite long, but let's take some time for Q&A. I thank you all so much for listening. I hope this was interesting, and I will love to look back at the chat of what was written because I couldn't do it in real time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for this presentation and for doing the effort of doing the videos. I will come back to you about that tool. It's very interesting, and I think we might use it as well at IMC at a point. So I will open the floor now. Does anyone has a question for Claudia? Can open the mic or put their hands up. And if not, there's some questions written in the chat that Dominique can also raise before you, and then we can start the discussion. And anyone who needs to leave on point, thank you for being here. Claudia has a way of staying a bit longer to answer all questions, but for those who have to leave, I thank you all for coming, joining, and the recording of the video will be up in our website, hopefully Monday. Okay, so now Dominique, you go with the questions.
Yes, there's been really great comments throughout the presentation and the webinar. I think a few had some aha moments here, especially on the points of self-awareness. A few had made some comments on maybe just grounding and bringing that self-awareness back into the mediation room. So I think that came really through. Also, Sasha was mentioning about, how these skills are already sort of in himself, but also having to remember sometimes you have your own cultural glasses on and having to kind of step out of your own, let's say, German set ways or whichever country you're from, to maybe just look a little bit wider or put the lens a little bit wider. I also noticed, like I said, the topic of emotions was really, there was a few comments on the emotion, and there was also a question that was posed by Dania about the emotion. Let me just see where that one is. She was asking specifically about how one can encourage parties. If I can just read it back, how can we encourage parties to reveal their emotions, especially when they do not want to show their vulnerabilities? And how are we determined to be rational, and if they are determined to be rational and in control? It can be cultural, especially in a workplace mediation, but staying in a rational place can render mediation quite shallow. So this was a question, maybe, Claudia, I would like to maybe just point that out, which I think is a brilliant question when we start holding on to our own beliefs and kind of stepping into our own view. So the emotions, as you say, is key. So maybe you can refer to Dania on this one.
Okay, yeah, very excellent question. And it comes back to how you show up. It's really true. The way that you show up and the way that you truly listen without judgment, it's kind of like putting some
some magic dust into the room. Really this listening, this having this welcoming thing without being like taking it really to an extreme, but truly just being. Your energy is going to make it possible. And also just, we talked about being the emotion detective. You know, you might see that the person just swallows a couple times. Right there was like the iron mask, and they swallow a couple times. It's like, is something going on? And wait. Right, and really come from that. And it's this the more blank you can be because of your radical non-judgment, the more present you can be, and the more likely it is that the conflict parties are going to share. Not everybody all the time. Some people are just not able to, and it's not our place to judge. But you know, that would be the starting point. Create the environment, and you create that mostly through your energy. There's no like magic tricks or manipulation that you do. It's just be there. Yeah. I hope that helped a little bit, but you know, if you ever want to talk a bit more about it, just you know, connect with me.
I see a
Thank
question
you.
from,
There was...
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I thought Sasha wanted to say something, but then close the mic. And if I was wrong, then we can go to Opiyemi that has their hands up. But Sasha, I don't know if you wanted to say or share something. No? Okay. Then Opiyemi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Opeyemi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for an insightful session. It was really eye-opening. For context, I'm a lawyer, energy lawyer who has recently pivoted into mediation. So I was wondering if there are any risks of overstepping ethical boundaries when using coaching techniques in mediation context.
I think that there's nothing forced here. It's a way to allow people to do maybe with a little bit more generosity,
Right.
what we wanted to do in mediation, right? I mean, we all know step 3, phase 3, we're going to do needs and interest elicitation and things like that. Right? I mean, if emotions point to needs, if you know, our just letting them stew in silence a little bit gets them to their needs and interests and things like that, I do not know where this would come in as something negative. Also, the idea here is that nothing is forced. They can still say, I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to answer.
Right.
They're still in control, right? You offer them a space in which they can do this work, but you know, you just do what you can. I mean, it's not like you stand there and with the whip and say, and you have to now tell me that it's not about it's about grief, and it's not about, you know, the kid banging on the drums. That, you know, that's not how it happens. So it's truly voluntary, and it's very soft. It's very soft.
Okay, so do we remind ourselves, or do we have to remind the parties that it's party driven to be able to stay beyond that?
I mean, the standard opening statement and the rule book for mediation in all of this still applies. Right? Self-responsibility, you know, they can stop it at any moment. They don't need to answer. Of course, that is always very, very clear. The process holds, right? You might just give a little bit more space for certain things. Right. Does that help you, Opeyemi?
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
So then, Halina, do you also have a question?
Yes, Mariana, thank you so much. Claudia, first of all, thank you so very much for this insightful and super helpful session. You were talking about managing expectations. Actually, you've leveled up our expectations. You've exceeded them with your impressive digital skills. I particularly love the videos and the fact that we could see you, you know, in a visible size, and while we were enjoying the slides. For me, I am going home with quite a few takeaways, especially the self-check questions. Very important to remember and check yourself once in a while. I have a more personal question. Since you started this journey as a coach, and then that led you into mediation, right? How difficult is it for you to change caps and not shift into this advisory role that coaches have?
Oh, you just triggered me. You just triggered me. A coach does not have an advisory role. Okay, this radical non-judgment is true, pure coaching 101. And all the people that give advice are advisors or consultants and not really coaches. Okay, I don't give advice. I don't give advice. You know, if I work with a big executive, I might be maybe a little bit more directive because they want to learn a little bit more about certain aspects, but it's always, okay, you take it or you leave it. That's your decision. Okay, but I never give advice and expect it to be followed. Okay, so the switching forth and back, you know, sometimes I do mediation and I don't even tell people that I'm doing mediation. I use elements of the mediation process that come in handy. I structure it a certain way during like a team coaching workshop or something like that, where all of a sudden there was some conflict we had to resolve. I'm not going to go there and like formally say this is mediation, but oh gee whiz, it works, right? I think there's so much alignment, at least in my philosophy, between mediation and coaching, that mediation for me, it's just one extra framework / tool that I can pull out as I need it. And sometimes I can also be realistic enough when I have a, let's say, more task level logistical mediation and I'm only given 50 minutes to solve it in a workplace mediation. That's all I'm given, to have these two people to kind of talk to each other and figure something out for a project. Then yeah, I can then also be okay with not going quite as deep, but I will always keep these basic tenets in mind. I hope that answers your questions, Alina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and sorry for triggering you. Thank you.
So I see we have two new people raising their hand. I don't know if Opiyemi has another question, but then I would give first the word to Sasha, then Nauman, and then we go. Okay, no, it was not a question anymore. Should we do these two questions and then close around? And if anyone has more questions, they can contact Claudia directly. Is everyone okay with it? Okay, then please, Sasha, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So as I have mentioned already, Claudia, this what you have described is for me very familiar, because all the things you have mentioned are part of the training when you want to become a mediator in Germany. So for me, it was very familiar to hear the things you were explaining, but on the other side, it showed me that outside of Germany, it seems to be completely different. And this was the very insight for me then. So how was it for you, especially then, to first be a coach, have the skills of a coach, and then learn the skills, let's say, of mediation that might be where you then have suddenly found out, oh, maybe I need to connect these two, which for me is very familiar, but it seems to be for a lot of the people here in the room isn't the case, and was a kind of an aha moment. So therefore it's interesting for me how you have identified that for you at some point.
Okay, thank you for the question. Culturally, there is differences between even different coaching schools. I had my very first really big coaching certification I did in France, in Paris. Then I did one in Germany, completely different. The team coaching stuff I did in America, completely different. Even in terms of like, what would you focus on? How long would you coach? How, and so on. I mean, really like that. So I think that in mediation, it's kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of us here are IMC graduates. We already noticed some different ways that the different instructors brought in terms of elements of style, or how they framed the mediation, or how quickly they pushed it forward, or how deep they went, and the verbiage that they used, and the energy that they brought to it. So there's cultural, there's your background that plays into it, and then also I really think it's matter of personal style, because you can see that you go to the same training and where everybody kind of gets inoculated by the same people at the same time, and then you see them 6 months later, and they might have very different ways of presenting their mediation. And I think that is okay, because the more we can bring our energy with it, however our energy is. Some people might have a much more up energy, others might be very, very slow. And guess what? Some conflict parties need more up energy, and some conflict parties need more calm energy. And some will be your clients and some won't. And so I think that, you have to just go with the flow and then make it your own. But that's also in life kind of how I do things. I hope that was at least a little bit of an answer for you, Sasha. I know that for people that are a little bit coaching inspired, this was truly basic, but I wanted to put words to it and just make it a matter of thought and conscious thought as we explore these things.
Thank you. Then Nauman.
Hello, Claudia. Thank you for the wonderful webinar. Very insightful. My question is that since you became a coach first and then you came towards mediation, right? So keeping in mind coaching, you have coached young people as well as senior people in management as well. So in order to teach them, or during coaching, what difference you have found out in order to impart the knowledge as per coaching between the young and the senior people? Because there is this, difference between the age, difference between the understanding, and also coming towards the mediation, when you use your coaching skills in the mediation, what are the challenges that you have faced in order to tackle those young and senior people in terms of mediation sessions?
Thank you for that question. I would actually take maybe the metric of age out of it and replace it with maturity. Okay, and just self-knowledge. Because you have some young people that are self-reflected, that know their values, that live them, that have done self-development work, let's say. And you can have even some older, sometimes even very, very smart people, like, you know, college professors and stuff, but they have never thought about themselves or other people or being human in any way, shape, or form. It's unbelievable. So I think that it's more the level of maturity that a person has. When you absolutely, like, you know, the classic coaching answer is always, it depends, right? If you have people there that you do some probing and they are just not, they cannot think further than their cell phone, well, then you keep it at the cell phone level. That's just reality. It's not in a 1 or 2 hour mediation session that you're going to dig into personality and preferences and things like that, right? So you have to have a good dose of experience maybe or knowledge, and then just take it as it comes, right? There's the job you ideally want to do, and then the job that you can do given a certain context. And then you just have to do your best. Sorry if that was a kind of maybe not a very committal answer, but it really depends. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Nauman. Great question.
Should we take one last question from Eva, Claudia? Is that fine by you?
Sure, it's fine.
Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much for this presentation. Very enjoyable. Absolutely. So one thing I think, well, I hope I'm not the only one, but that is part of the self-awareness journey, right? Being able to recognize one's own fears around the actual mediation process, especially I think as a new mediator, right? Without a lot of experience, sitting in the mediation and perhaps worrying if one does a good job. And how do you have any concrete, practical sort of suggestions for how to manage that, you know, not going inside oneself and thinking me, and how am I react? What am I doing? Am I doing it right? But just keeping oneself in the background, and then, you know, to evaluate one's performance afterwards, but not getting tangled up in, oh my God, did I just say that? Or, you know, so somehow keeping one's insecurities, I guess, in the background. Thank you.
And thank you, great question. And maybe there, we just turn it around again. It's the insecurities are there. Acknowledge them, and then what is it, something that you could tell yourself? There's no room, there's no really space here right now for my insecurity. Maybe curiosity would be better. And if I'm curious enough and I listen well enough, maybe with the training that I have done and the process that is proven, I can already get 70% there. And maybe for today, 70% is all I can do. And I'm going to learn from it. And next time I'm going to, I'm going to do some work afterwards to build on that, on this experience. And next time I'm going to get to 80, 85, 90%. Okay. It's like this pushing down of your own emotions is, it's like, yeah, it's there. Yeah. I was nervous today. I'm like, yep, I was very nervous. But then, I was just able to let it go. And then in the end, I just talked about stuff that I love to talk about. So and then also, I think it really helps to practice in a place that's not a real client. Go and do role plays, go and exchange hypotheticals with other fellow mediators. If you're not yet, come into our group, and all the other people too can join our deliberate mediation practice group if they want to, and just explore it. See also that you're not alone. because you're gonna see that, hey, you know, these struggles, they're real, they happen. And, you know, so there's no magic formula that all of a sudden is gonna give you like a confidence implant. But it's just taking it, normalizing it. It is good that I am nervous and insecure. I realize that there's a place for that. So what exactly am I insecure about, and how can I learn about this? And, you know, frame it as something positive and constructive, even there, right? And let it go for that half hour, 2 hours that you're in the mediation. Say, I'm going to deal with this later. You can pull a Scarlett O'Hara and say, I'm going to deal with this insecurity later as I think about it. Great. Oh.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Claudia, for these very powerful reflections, as powerful messages. I think everybody learned a lot. As Dominic said, I hope everybody had an aha moment. And feel free to reach us or to reach Claudia if you have any further questions. And we hope to see you on the 5th of May in our next webinar about alternative ways to mediate, alternative methods. So hope to see a lot of you there, and stay tuned for new webinars that we're planning for you guys. Have a nice day, mid of the week, so almost weekend, and see you next time.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for staying. Bye.